Hey guys, it's Up Bump. This is the next in the D&D stories line that I have ready for you guys. This third one's title is The Arctic Journey. I actually wrote some stuff down so it would be easier for me to recall upon it instead of long awkward pauses or me shuffling around or separate parts altogether, because I want to tell all this in one go, because a lot happened and at the same time not a lot happened, and at the same time everything happened, if that makes any sense at all. So a lot of good things, but just not a lot in general. So our opening is a Arctic type city. Think like, I haven't really watched a lot of Lord of the Rings, but think, Norse. Think up in the north a lot. Think a lot of wolves. Also think kind of Eskimo. It was like a mixed culture of Eskimo / Norse, and it was frost elves that were more Eskimo-like, or Eskimo's not the right term, sorry, Inuit, I'm sorry, I'm uncultured, so, it's whatever. But you have more of an Inuit culture in the frost elves, and the Norse were more made up of humans. And the frost elves did a lot more of like the fishing, the I guess harvesting, although I don't know what you would harvest like as far as farming goes, but they did farm, they fished, they were a lot of priests among them, and the Norse were kind of more like the army, and they had their hand in more blacksmiths and that kind of stuff, which would make sense because a frost elf takes double damage from all fire-based attacks. So, it makes sense that they wouldn't like fire. In fact, on their racial sheet, it even says that when they come into the presence of fire, even a campfire, they shake a little bit because they're scared of it, whether, they're conscious of that or not. So you can be unconsciously afraid of fire, which, makes enough sense. They're called frost elves for a reason. So that's the setup. And basically there are 10 little cities, or like in a circle, and they're all surrounding the capital. This is a very, very small country, but it's still a country no less. And we had to make characters that would be in the city for a ceremony, because in this Arctic country, I don't remember what it was called. In this Arctic country, it's kind of like how Alaska is. They have sunlight for so long, and then it goes dark. And then they have sunlight for so long again, and then it goes dark again. So it's been dark for a very long time, and it's going to turn back into day very, very soon. So this culture, really celebrates the changing of from the moon to the sun. I think it symbolizes a lot of good times to come. This culture really, really actually celebrates diversity, so they invite a lot of other people from a lot of other nations, surrounding nations, to come and visit their capital to see the change, all the changing, and the northern lights change to a different color during this time of year. So it's a festive part of the year. And what they do is they have a feast on the first day, and for 21 days they have different little things that they're doing, whether it be carnival games like bobbing for apples or bobbing for fish, I guess for all of our frost elf friends. And they have all these little different things that they do. In fact, down south, the southern kind of cities, they actually wrestle polar bears. So they might bring up a polar bear so they can wrestle, and the biggest men can prove how big and strong they are, and all that jazz. So we get to our characters, and our characters have to either live or be invited to or go, or whatever may have you, to the central city for this festival. So I made a character called Luna, And yes, she's a female character. And no, it really didn't come into play all that much. People think it's a very big change going from playing mostly male characters to playing a female character. And there wasn't a really big shift. I'm not really sure how I liked her personality likewise, because playing a character and enjoying it is totally different from actually liking that character as a person. She was very upright, she was lawful good, she was a monk. You know, she was very upright, she was very, she allowed certain things that most lawful good characters wouldn't allow, because we kind of look at the alignment system a little bit differently. But I'm not going to get into that, because even if I don't have many commenters and subscribers at the time, when this gets a little bit bigger, I know there's going to be a flame war down there, and I'm not even going to start it before it happens. So with this group that we have myself, who is a half frost elf monk, who is a local of the major city, named Luna. We have a high elf, not a frost elf, who is a local, believe it or not, of the central city, named Zal. Z''ALL, Zal. And Zal is a sorcerer, but he also owns like a small, not caravan. He owns like a small stand where he sells things periodically, and he and Luna are good friends. They know each other, they talk every day, and he kind of, being a high elf, was a kind of like the sore thumb of the community, just like she was, because there's not a lot of, half human, half frost elf children. Even though this culture celebrates diversity, it's just kind of a line that no one really crosses. I mean, there's no like social rules that say you can't, and she was accepted just like everybody else was, but she felt isolated because she didn't really know what culture she belonged to. And Zal was several years older than her, I think like maybe 10 or 12. And she really enjoyed talking to him because he was so weird, just like she looked so weird. So they kind of like, I guess in a funny way, became a bunch of misfits. If you've ever seen the old Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that's what they did. Every day they would sing like, "We're a couple of misfits," and yeah, laugh at you will. And they were good friends. And our third character, because we always, in these earlier campaigns, we always threw in something that wasn't from the core rule books, and I don't think Frost Elf is either, but I got it approved by the DM, so I guess it's alright. And I was just playing a monk. There's nothing really special about monks. And so this third guy was human, and his name was Arsonist. For those of you listening, means one who burns something, or one who impulsively likes to burn something. So, his name being Arsonist, and me being half Frost Elf, and I take how we accepted that was it could ignore half of all frost damage done to me, and like basically the modifiers for everything went either down like half or up half, you know what I mean? Like instead of taking double damage from fire damage, I took 1.5 damage, and instead of ignoring all, or no, I wouldn't take 1.5. Hold on, I can't math, I've never really been good at math. So instead of taking like half damage or the full double damage from fire attacks, I would take like, I guess it would be like 1.5 damage. And instead of resisting all of frost damage, I only resisted like half of it. It was a weird kind of trade-off thing that we had. It was kind of hard to keep track of. But it didn't come into play very often, so that was okay. So, anyway, our third character was named Arsonist, and Arsonist was a Keyblade wielder for all you Kingdom Hearts fans out there. And he was coming to the city because he was invited by the mayor, because he was some kind of great hero or something. So the mayor of our city invited him, as a personal guest. And it was my job as I was more of Luna lived in a monastery, but my character was more of an entertainer than anything else. She would like do like little tumble tricks, flips and kicks and all that jazz, and tightrope walk, which was her like specialty. That's what they would have her do every last day of the festival, like on the 21st day when the sun comes up. That's where she does most of her performance. So since she's kind of like a local, almost like a bard, she's kind of like a local, not really hero, but like, you know, well liked, well respected, well thought of type person, has a good reputation. She's assigned by the mayor to show this new guy around. So I go to the gate and I'm waiting for the new guy, and I see him because, you know, he kind of sticks out because this guy has red hair instead of like the normal blonde that I'm used to seeing, or white in Snow Elf's case, and he's human, so, you know, I kind of am able to pick him out, and I pick him out and I grab him and I go over to, like, I'm showing him around. I show him the monastery, I show him the church, I show him town hall, and we head over to Zol's stall, Zol's market stall, and we head up to him and we talk a little bit, and Zol is talking about like how he's ready to, you know, rip off the next sucker, who is a guy we both know as Frank. And Frank is from up north, and he only comes down during the moon to sun ceremony and the sun to moon ceremony. So we know who he is. But we don't really, like, he's not like our best friend or something. And Luna kind of doesn't like his like kind of tone and attitude, because she doesn't think ripping off people is really a good idea, or it's not nice to do. So she like gets onto him a little bit, but, you know, Zol's Zol, and Zol kind of just does what he wants. That's a running theme the entirety of this campaign. He kind of does what he wants. So we meet up with Frank. So we have a party of 4 now. 3 players and 1 NPC, because, you know, rule of 4. So we all go to the main square where a giant feast is taking place. And we all have seats on the main table. So we all sit down and we're all starting to eat. I'm eating my fish raw because I'm a half frost elf and I can. And we're eating our food, and all of a sudden we hear like a woman scream in the middle of our meal. And we all jump up out of our chairs and we see a giant fire. One of the major buildings had caught fire. So, you know, me being a half frost elf, I'm immediately terrified of this fire. So I grab everyone I can, and I grab like all the children I can find, all the frost elf people that would get hurt, and I like push them out, like try to help them get out of the way. And as soon as all they're cleared, I book it, because, you know, burns on me hurt. And I noticed none of my party was running away with me, and I was like, oh, dang it. So I wrestled within myself to find the courage to go back, and I eventually did. I was able to muster up the courage to run back and go help. And Arsonist was using frost magic, which is funny when you think about it, and Zol was using his magic to try to like summon water on top of it, or not summon water, because it's a cleric spell. Something similar to like put out the flames. And I saw, I'm a monk, so I can't really do I don't have anything in the way of magic, so I saw Frank just like throwing chunks of like snowballs on the big, you know, fire. So I just joined him and just start throwing snowballs at it and hope for the best. And it's put out, and we were like, whew, you know, dodged a bullet there. And we see a cloaked figure run away in that back alleyway. In fact, I see him. I rolled high enough and everybody else didn't. I go, someone's running away, and we all book it for him. And a detail I forgot to mention was there had been a lot of the two gods in this, like, that are mainly worshipped in this country, are Cord, the god of athletics and like strength and courage and all that jazz, and Artemis, who is the god, or who is like the huntress god, from Greek mythology. And I don't really know a lot about Greek mythology, so So the frost elves mainly serve Artemis, and the humans mainly serve Cord. And apparently, from the past couple months, there have been cultists of Cord, kind of like radicals, doing a bunch of different things, like burning down like temples of Artemis, and like burning down orphanages, and like doing what they will. So the group, we all chase him, and we run down there, and we climb down. He goes into a house, and as soon as we open the door, like, he's not there. So we kind of look for a trap door or something, and we find one. And I think it was like Frank who found it, and he like opened it up. So we sent Frank down first. I think after him we sent Arsonist, then Zal, then Luna. So I could cover our back just in case someone decided to come down here and wanted to eat our face off, So we all climb down, and it's a tunnel. We go through the tunnel, and we're stealthily moving along like a good party should. And we hear like some scraggly voices, like they say, just 20 more days and all that we need will be ours. And we were like, wait, what? What are they talking about? So before we could hear any more of what they were talking about, Frank drops, and then Arsonist drops, and me and Saul kind of look at each other, and we're like, wait, what's going on? And we're ambushed from either side, and we're knocked out before we can do anything. We didn't even get a good look at our attackers. And we learned later that was a sleep spell, and elves are immune to sleep spells. So we were good, we just weren't able at level 2 to survive a good bonk on the head. So we wake up in really, really tight spaces, and we feel like we're moving, like we're drifting along, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm in a barrel, aren't I? And DM's like, possibly. So I rear back because I'm a monk, and like I punch the roof of my prison, and the lid pops off, and I stick my head out, and he's like, yeah, you're in a barrel going down an icy stream. And I was like, oh, dang it. And I look down, and I'm only wearing like the bare minimum. I have like a loincloth on and something to cover my breast, and that's it. That's all I got. So I was like, okay. And I look around, and I see other barrels going down, and I see another hand, pop up, and there is Saul. And we kind of have a talk for a second, because we're not really in any danger. We're just kind of drifting along. And Zal jumps out of the water, into the water, and climbs up on land, which wasn't the smartest thing, because now, in addition to being cold, he's wet also, which means he's probably freezing. But he was able to like cast a fire spell to like warm himself up. And the next, there was 2 more barrels, and I made a guess that was probably Arsonist and Frank who were in those. So I jump in after them, and I rear back, and I punch through one of their barrels, and I rip it open, and there's Arsonist inside, and he's only wearing a long cloth too. And I shake him awake, and I say, hey, get to land. We need to get moving and figure out, where's civilization. So he jumps in the water too and freezes, and like gets to land, and he's cold too. But by then, I think Zal had like taken or like chopped a tree down or like burned it to where it would fall over and like started a fire using the tree. So, which was a very big task because like the ground is full of snow, which is wet by how it is. But he was able to catch it on fire. So I jumped to the next one to go save Frank, and I rolled to break the barrel. I rolled a 20. I punch straight through the barrel and knock Frank clean out when I do. I was like, oh no, God. So I picked up Frank and I kind of like helped him along, and I drug him to where the fire was. And I'm half frost elf. I'm not as hardy as normal frost elves when it comes to like snow, but I could basically go my entire adventure just in this two-piece loincloth bra set and be relatively okay. Like, I'm not cold from swimming in the river. In fact, I think they nominated me to go fishing for them because they all were affected by the cold. So I was like, after my initial, man, you boys can't take care of yourselves, I jumped into the river and I caught a couple fish. And we shared so we could all have something to eat because we were all hungry like all get out. And we realized that was how the main city, and I think now that I remember, its name was like Frostfall with a V instead of an F because that's the way our DM is. It was how it works is there's this one river that basically if we have mail that we want to send out to the rest of the world that isn't in the country, we have like some kind of boating system where it goes down the river and hits a mail, like another country, and then hits a mailbox or a post office basically, and then they can send it to where it needs to go. Apparently we had been drifting down there and we couldn't really judge how long we had been gone. So we were like, how long have we been out? And no one has a clue. So we see fire in the distance and we're like, okay, that's probably where civilization is. So we pack up our stuff and everybody else starts going very slowly because it's cold and they're freezing. And I'm just kind of like, jollily. Is there? No, that's not a word. Okay. I start like briskly walking because, I'm not really cold or anything, but I know that they're probably going to freeze by the time we get there. So I'm trying to get them to move so we won't be so cold. And we get to a group and we're met at the, like, it wasn't even really a city, it was more like a village. We were met at the village by a priest of Artemis. And he tells us that Artemis gave him a vision that we were going to be coming very soon. And, like, she updated him on what was happening. So basically he knew what was going on. And he explained to us that we had been out for about 2 days. And so we have like 18 days to get to our... He explains the entirety of the situation. And the entirety of the situation is the cult is going to do something very, very bad on the 18th. And they got rid of us instead of slitting our throats. I don't know why they wouldn't, And they're going to do something very, very bad juju on that day. So we're told that we need to make it to that city, and it takes like I think 15 days to get back to that city before the ceremony starts, and we have like 18 days, so we got like 3 days to spare. That's it. So every day we're going to have to be moving, which I do not understand how we got that far along in just 2 days of drifting. But maybe the river just runs very quickly, and we were moving all day and all night, so it kind of didn't really make sense to me. But, I guess in the end, all I would be arguing is how much time we would have left. Less more than more. So, we all agreed, and the party, the first thing we do is, we decide we're going to rest for the rest of the day, and he gives us clothes and, money to buy some supplies. And I'm a monk, so I don't really need much. So, I go straight to, the tavern, because, why not, I'm a monk, but I don't necessarily stay away from alcohol. So it's like starting to be later in the day. So we decide that tomorrow we're going to head out, and today we're just going to kind of do what we're going to do. So I'm challenged by one of the bigger guys to a drinking contest, and using my monk fortitude, I'm able to, because monks just have so high fortitude even at level 2, I was able to outlast the other guy. And the other guy gets really, really, into a drunken rage and tries to hit me. But I'm able to dodge him well enough, because I may be drunk, but apparently I still got moves like Jagger, So after that, in character, I couldn't really I didn't really know what was happening, but a bar fight broke out. And this fight was kind of bloody. The paladins were called, all that jazz. And somehow I ended up in the middle of a street, asleep, and I woke up at 9 o'clock in the morning with a hangover. And I see Arsonist approach me, and he was like, were you always here? And I'm like, you guys forgot me when you went to the hotel, didn't you? And he's like, no. And I just looked at him, because there's no rolling really against a player character. So I see through his little lie, and I'm just like, I'll remember that during your night watch. It's kind of it's an empty threat, kind of, because she would still protect, them on her night watch, but it's more like hey, you just don't forget one of your friends who could have possibly saved your life, if you didn't wake up, because I think it wasn't really dangerous then when we were floating down, but I think there was rapids or something. Well, I guess not, because that wouldn't make much sense for the post office. I don't know. I wasn't a post office type of girl, and that's weird to say, but yeah. Playing a female character, like I said again, is really weird experience, but it's not a bad one. Still didn't make this campaign any better, but it wasn't a bad one. And I'll get into why this campaign left a bad taste in my mouth very soon. So, we head out, and we go, we buy our supplies. All I did was buy. Everyone else spent their stuff on stupid things, really enchanted weapons and that kind of stuff, and none of them bought flint and steel. None of them bought bed rolls. None of them brought cutlery sets, which are stuff I don't really need as a frost elf. Or a half frost elf. I could just jump in the river and catch a fish, or I could just sleep under a tree and be just fine. But everybody else was so stupid, and Luna has this, not really I'm better than you all, but I'm responsible for you guys to keep y'all alive. So she uses her money to buy a camping set, and that's it. That and 4 shurikens, just in case she ever needs to make a ranged attack. So we head off, and nothing really interesting happens for a while. For a couple days, we fight, the occasional bandit, or the occasional good thing happens. We find, a broken down caravan, and everyone's dead, and there's a bunch of gold to the side, which doesn't make any sense, because why would your attackers leave gold? But anyway, we get so far, and we're about 2 days from the next little village, and or like we can go there, spend the night, and then the very next morning we need to get booking because we don't have a lot of days to spare. So we do, but before that, we're attacked by a bunch of the cultists, which are heading south because I don't know. I think the DM explained that like we weren't really supposed to get away. Like it wasn't them that put us in the barrels. We kind of figured that out because they would have killed us. We knew too much, which was what I was wondering the entire time. I was like, if someone figured out my master plan that I'd been working years to accomplish, or months, or however long they've been working, and like I knew one person or even a group of people learned about it and they could possibly stop me from doing it, I would cut their throats as soon as I could. But apparently something happened to where we got to live. So these cultists are after us, and we're level 2, and they're like commoners. So yeah, we beat them up pretty badly, and we kill 2 of them, and we leave one alive because we want information out of him. And like I said, I'm lawful good, but I'm not above, like, not really torture, but just kind of beating him up and like saying, look, tell us what we need to know. And he says no, and he's just not being very cooperative, just turning him over to the fighter and letting him do what he will. And that's basically what happened. We didn't really get an answer from this guy. He was so loyal to his cult. I mean, like, I give him props. And I wasn't dark enough to start cutting off fingers or anything, but I probably would have got more out of him. But, lawful good. So we tie him up and we keep on going. So we have at the end of this day, we're going to reach the next village. So we've been rolling on percentiles, so we rolled into percentile to see what we would run into today. And we ran into more cultists, but we spotted them before they spotted us. And we decided that today we did not want to tangle with them because they might cut their buddy loose and their buddy might want to kill us. So we hid in the tree line and waited for them to pass. We even learned a little bit more about their plan. It involved using their little amulets of cord. And I was like, all right. And Frank is like appalled at some of their actions because he worships cord as well, being a fighter. So against his will, we decided not to tangle with them today. So we get all of our stuff and we sneak around them and we make it to the city. And I think we eat at a restaurant because we've acquired so much gold that we can live kind of. We can take a day, an evening off, and just eat, go to the tavern, drink a little bit, go to the inn and sleep. We can do all the living things. So we head out the next day. Nothing. The next day after that, we rolled on percentile. Zal's players roll. He rolls a 1. So in the distance, we see something burrowing underground, and it's whatever it is, it's big and it's fast. So it beams past, and Luna and Frank jump to the right side of or the left side of the trail. Zal and Arsonist jump to the right, and it pokes its head out after it's burrowed past us, and it's this weird centipede half dragon thing. I think it's in the bestiary somewhere, but this thing was scary. It was big, and it had these giant freaking fangs and teeth. Its leg claws were huge. There was almost if we were to fight this thing head on, we would so be dead. I had some kind of collection of feats that let my acrobatics aid in my full defensive action, which I think that feat's called acrobatic defense at 3.5. And I had that taken just in case I would have to be in a very defensive position, because I think we were level 3 by now. So yeah, I had a new feat that I could pick out. So we engage this thing. Not a very smart idea. At first, all I did was throw shurikens at it, and it takes like a big bite out of Arsonist, and then Frank confronts it and gets its attention, and it bites Frank in half and kills him in one shot. So we decided to run. I ran like along the tree lines north. Zal ran along the tree lines like on the other side north, and Arsonist ran back to town. Well, the DM rolls a D3, which is, I think what we use is a D6, and if it's 1, 2, 1, 3, 4, 2, 5, 6, 3. So he puts us all on a little thing, and it goes after Arsonist. And in character, I don't know what happened to them, but out of character I do, because I could obviously listen into the fight. And it chases Arsonist down, and it attacks him. And it's gonna, like, as soon as it gets close enough, what Arsonist does is he, like, banishes his keyblade and puts his hand underneath the centipede dragon thing's, like, muzzle, and makes it reappear, and it goes straight through the brain and kills it, which is great, because now it's dead. But then its body like pukes acid at him, like regurgitates it or something, and like burns him alive, and he dies. And that was the end of that character. So we lost 2 party members to this thing, and I have no clue what this thing was. It was something high level. I knew that much. So Zal and Luna like regroup, and they're like, "We're alive! We're alive!" But even though they're really sad for their party members, they're happy that they're alive. So we make it to the next town, and by then Luna is feeling gloom and doom right now because of everything that's happened. And there's a temple of Artemis, and she goes to pray, and more cry than really pray. But it was, even Zal was like taken aback by it, and he's normally a very happy-go-lucky type guy. So in the temple, I meet up with a gnome paladin. Say hello to Arsonist's replacement. This gnome paladin, as funny as that sounds, is a paladin of goodness. He's not really devoted to a god. He's just kind of all around just a paladin of goodness. And he was wondering why I'm crying, and I told him what was going on. So he was like, "All right, I'll join you on your quest." So, gnome paladin joins the party. So the next day we head out. Nothing. Next day, nothing. Third day, we run into a very angry, hell-bent polar bear. When I say this thing was hell-bent on killing us, I mean this thing must have not had anything to eat for the past 4 months. Let me explain the entirety of the situation. So we run into a polar bear, and the gnome, I don't even remember his name. So I guess that should be like foreshadowing what happens to this gnome. This gnome and Luna engage the polar bear while it's all sitting back casting spells at it. And it kills the gnome paladin very quickly. Like, just 2, double claws down its face. His face raw. It's dead. And I was like, oh crap, I'm next. So I fight with it as long as I can, and it knocks me clean out. I'm not dead, but I'm like close to being dead. Or no, I was at 0 exactly. So I wasn't really dying, but I wasn't doing that great. And I forgot to mention at this point that we had, I think like the day before, we had picked up a deck of many things off a corpse. And we all knew what it was because we rolled high enough on our knowledges. And Luna only ever took one card from that deck. And the card she picked was that one impossible, not really question, but she could get an answer for one question she asked, and the answer was going to work no matter what. And, you know, I was like, yes, because the deck of many things can do a bunch of good stuff or a bunch of bad stuff. And like one of the things is like, it's called like the void, where you go into a separate dimension and you fall forever and you never die, and you just live out your eternity like that. Yeah, it gets bad. So Zal draws a card in his last little ditch effort of desperation. And the card, I'm not really sure what version of the deck of many things we were using, but basically a fort appears out of nowhere, like a castle almost, anywhere he desires. And he gets to own it, basically. He has the deed to it now. So he's like, I want its north wall, which would be like the wall you walk in, to be on top, or like, not north wall, but like the entrance wall, to be on top of the polar bear right now. And I'm out of the way, so this wouldn't hurt me. And, okay, the polar bear does not understand English. The polar bear also doesn't can't read thoughts, because Zal didn't even say this, he just thought it. The polar bear still gets a reflex save for this. And I was like, what the heck? Why does he get a reflex save? And, you know, eventually GM's rule was GM's rule, so, you know, I couldn't argue with him anymore. So the polar bear gets a reflex save, and he makes it. Why? And he, like, does a dodge roll, and he's on the outside, and we're all, me, Zal and I, and the corpse of our gnomish friend are in the inside, and Zal draws another card, or like 2 more cards out of desperation. His first card gives him like 50,000 gold worth of jewels, which is an outrageous amount. But he got that amount in jewels, and it just like plopped in front of him. He's like, that's cool, but it's not very helpful. So he draws another card, and the next card he draws is a card that's like, let me think. You can avoid any one situation by using this card, and the situation goes away. He was very clever with this card. He worded his situation in such a way that he wished that he would never have to live with Arsonist being his dead friend. Which the DM could have been like, okay, and like altered reality to where we weren't friends with him and he's still dead. But he decided he was going to give him points for creativity, and he brought Arsonist back to life. Not only brought him back to life, but since he reworked reality and how everything worked, Arsonist was with us right now. So he was inside the fort, and he just like pings back to life. And he's like, wait, what's going on? And the polar bear is like bashing down this iron gate, which I'm making an argument. I'm like, there's no way a polar bear could bash through this iron gate. This iron gate's made to defend from like hundreds of soldiers. This is a fort. This is made for this kind of stuff. I'm still knocked out, so I'm not really saying any of this, but I'm definitely thinking it. And the polar bear breaks through. So Zal's exchanging, or is throwing spells at it, And Arsonist is just standing there with his full spell slots, not unscathed, all of his armor, all of his weapons, thinking, man, what should I do? And I'm like, and across the table, I verbally say this. How about heal me? And he's like, oh yeah, you're on the ground, aren't you? I'm like, yes, because he kind of stopped paying attention to the battle after his second character died, which is, understandable. I mean, like, and this all happened in one night. So this section happened, not all the campaign, but this section happened in one night. His character dies, he makes a new one, he dies in the first encounter, so yeah, I would stop paying attention too. Because, your character's not coming in anytime soon. But he's brought into the combat, and I guess it kind of goes with role-playing, because he doesn't really know the situation. So he heals me, and our combined efforts, we were able to beat the polar bear into submission. We decide that in the fort is a great place to go to sleep tonight. So we repair. I think Zal used the mending spell to be able to repair the gate. And we went inside the fort to rest. There were servants there. There were food there. I don't know where they came from, but the deck of many things strange like that. So we get a full meal, and Zal tells Arsonist about this deck, and they're kind of keeping it away from me, and I can kind of understand that, because I didn't really want to draw another card anyway. I drew one, I got lucky, so I'm just gonna roll with that card. And Arsonist draws one, and very basically a level 4 fighter now joins the party. He swears loyalty to Arsonist. And one, knocks on the door, and we, open the door, and there he is, and he's, totally compliant to Arsonist. So basically, he was Frank 2.0. I think we even used Frank's stats, but his name was, David or something. So, we have our full party back. And then we start heading off. Now, this is where I say the campaign died. But what I mean by that is the campaign stopped being fun. It was kind of fun up until this point. And this is when it really started going downhill, at least for me. My experience from here on out was I hate... Alright, in a D&D game, it's impossible to never hate your group even once. But this is where I legit hated my group. And I was just I created a monster, and now I can't contain it. So, we're walking, and Zal gets the bright idea that we've drawn X amount of good cards, so there must be X amount of more. And we've only drawn 1 or 2 bad cards that didn't really do much. So he decides that he's just going to keep drawing cards and see what happens. He draws 1 card. This card binds his soul to an object anywhere between 60 feet, a 60-foot radius around him. And his body drops. It's still breathing and everything. It's still alive. It's just his consciousness is now transferred to an object within 60 feet of our radius. Just think about that for a second. The DM could have been really, he could have just been yeah, your soul is bound to that grain of sand over there. Good luck finding him. Or he could have been your soul is bound to, or all you had to do was just break the object and his soul was freed. He could have been yeah, his soul is that blade of grass, or his soul is that leaf on that tree, or his soul is that snowflake. He could have been that distinct about it. If the DM wanted to, and if he was a lot more fair in this situation, Zal would have been dead. There would have been no way for us to find him. There would have been no conceivable way we could find him. In fact, I think in all reality we should have just left him. But I was starting to get bitter at that point, because they were hogging the deck from me and they weren't letting me have any of it. But you can't be a winner all the time, I guess. So we still like this guy, so we start looking for his soul, and I think what I did was I thought maybe the DM would like put it in a gold coin. So I took all of his money and I started like chipping away at some of the gold coins. Like, they're still valuable. It's just I chipped away a little bit, like enough to where if his soul was trapped, it would be freed. So I start chipping away his soul, or his money, which was basically his whole soul, because that's all he cared about. Ha ha ha. So he, at some point, Zal picked up like a bow that was made out of wood that couldn't be broken, or was like very sturdy or something like that. And I had an idea. I took my knife and I cut the string of the bow, and yeah, that had his soul, and he came out. And then he drew like another card, like immediately, and I'm like, what the, does this guy have a death wish or something? And before I can stop him, he draws another card, and the card like puts him in a situation just as bad as he was in, and we had to save him again. And then he immediately draws another card, and he draws the card that like imprisons him somewhere like 50 feet below the earth, or like in another dimension, or something horrible like that. Like, we couldn't get to him if we tried, and he disappears. And I'm just like, well, we're gonna leave him, because there's no way we can do that. We've wasted enough time standing here like trying to save him 3 or 7 times from himself, no less. We're done with this. We're gonna move on. And even Arsonist, who was like kind of getting buddies with Zol, was like, yeah, we're leaving him because bad juju is gonna happen to the main city if we don't. And then the DM has one of the worst moments that I have ever seen a DM have. Granted, every DM has a bad moment. I had a bad moment as a DM in handling whenever Ben, King of the Orcs, and summoning gods, the very first D&D stories that I told, I had I was messed up whenever I just killed Ben's character, or Ben, straight off. But he was gonna die one way or another from my hand, so that was inevitable. He was gonna die somehow, if not by Lando's lightning, then by Avatar Satara going into the Avatar state while he tried to, when he was trying to kill him, and being killed himself. So some way he was gonna die. But this is something I've never seen, and I kind of understand what it is now. It's just kind of like, when you're a DM, or especially new DMs make this mistake. You kind of show favoritism, whether you know it or you don't. And I've done this too. I'm not even going to pretend like I haven't. And I've gotten better at it as a DM. I try not to show like favoritism. I try to I don't let people tell me their AC, health, saving throws, anything like that, because if I know that stuff, I might fidget the numbers, and I've done it in the past before, so that they don't die. But, nowadays, I don't let them tell me their health. I don't let them tell me, anything about their character. I just look at their character sheet once to make sure it's not broken, and we roll with it. So, the biggest DM mistake I've ever seen in my life. Get this. A traveling rich man who wants to do the world good finds us. Oh, I'm sorry if you heard that. My stomach growled. I'm recording this early in the morning, so I might need to eat some breakfast after I record this. There's a rich man who's looking to do the world good, and he hears our plight, and he uses a magic scroll to get Zal back from 50 miles underground back to the surface, and releases him and walks off. And I'm like, what the heck? I've always been a cruel DM, but I've been a fair DM. If the dragon just swoops down and breath weapons and rolls max damage, and you die, you died. If you jump into a volcano and you die, you die. If you get yourself trapped 50 feet below or 50 miles below the Earth's surface, and we're level 3-4 adventurers by now, you're going to die because we're not going to be able to save you. The DM really was trying to save him from himself, and Saul was about to draw another card, but before he could draw the Reaper card that summons the Grim Reaper that he has to fight one-on-one and we can't help him, I grabbed the deck from him and I handed it to Arsonist, and I'm like, no. And he's like, but? I'm like, no. We have wasted too much time already saving your butt, and we're not going to spend another second doing it. If you draw another card and it kills you, it's on your fault, because I'm handing the deck to Arsonist, and Arsonist is not going to hand it back to you. And he was like, aw. So we travel, and it's like 2 days later, and we're coming up to the big city by now. I've missed a bunch of days, but I can't remember every single thing that happened. And we roll for fate, and I think I rolled this time, and I rolled a 1. So we're like, oh god, giant centipede dragon thing, run! And he's like, no. And we're met with a dark paladin. And he's like decked out in black armor, and he has like this giant freaking mace. He's got this hulking shield in the other hand. And we can tell that if this guy fights us, we're dead. And like the Anti-Paladin that he was, or the Anti-Paladin he was, has like the class has a feature called Smite Good, which means if he even vaguely tries to do this on me and he hits, I'm going to take massive damage. So he's about to charge, and I use my wish, or my remember I drew a card earlier that it would answer one impossible question, no matter how impossible, how stupid, how like idiotic, it would give me an answer that would work. That was the description of the card. So basically, I'm calling upon greater wisdom than I know to help me. And I activate the ability and I ask the question, how do I make this guy become our friend? That's a valid question, because he's a person, you know? He has to have reason, he has to have logic. I know he was sent by the cultist, but there is a way for him to become our friend. And I ask the question, how can I make him my friend? And the DM replies with, you hear in his audible voice, you can't. And I just stared at him for a second, like I wasn't going to say anything about it, but the answer, you can't? Like, this guy over here, Zal, a couple of minutes ago, should have been told you can't. Like, whenever his soul was bound to one object, like within a 60-foot radius, which could have been like that pebble over there, or that blade of grass, or that snowflake, or like the hair on Luna's head, or Arsonist's like necklace, or it could have been any number of things that would have made it, even if it wasn't cheap like a blade of grass, it could have been like Luna's earrings, which she wouldn't have thought of. You could have made it fair, but so impossible that none of us could have ever guessed it. But when I asked the simple question, how do I make another human being my friend, from a card from the deck of the many things that says, any impossible question that seems like it can't be answered, it will be answered and it will work, I get, no, you can't. it was at that point I really understood that I just wanted to get through the end of this campaign because there was so much favoritism. And I'm not harping on the DM. The DM was the same one that did like the one shot with in the last episode with Ragnar, and he's gone a long way since then. He's become a very, very great campaign builder, and he's become a very, very great DM. And I'm not harping on him anymore. I was just so frustrated at that time. I was just like, really? After everything this other guy's been doing and you've been okay with, all of the bad things that could have happened to him. Yeah, so and this is kind of like dice fall where they may, this part, so I'm not really mad at this part. I'm just kind of like mad at everything leading up to this part. So the paladin breaks away and he runs through us, or through our defenses, and I'm like in the back of the line because he was able to detect I was a good person. And we didn't know what attacks of opportunity were at that point, so he probably wouldn't have been able to make it. But he engages me in combat, and he uses Smite Good. I'm dead, like, instantly. Like, one hit, bam, dead. And, like, my character's dead. So Arsonist, in a fit of desperation, drew out another card, and this card lets him one-shot any person he chooses. And he's like, or the next person he attacks instantly dies. And he attacks the Anti-Paladin, obviously, and he dies. Yeah. We were so close to the town that they just picked up my body and ran toward the temple. And the temple men, or the priest, like, ended up healing me, or like, not healing me because I was dead, but he was able to resurrect me because his magic was strong enough, and I was so well liked in the city that he was like, yeah, we need to get this person back, awake and alive. And we explained the situation. We have like 2 days to spare, or like a day to spare, or something like that. And we like set up for where we think like the cultists are going to attack, and they do, and they have like sleeping spells to make everyone go to sleep. But apparently those amulets that we've been picking up, that everyone had one now, were like some kind of like resistance to where we didn't fall for the sleep spell or whatever they used. Or it wasn't a sleep spell, it was more like a mind control spell. We were able to like not be attacked mentally, and we were able to just fend them off just with these amulets, which makes sense. I mean, it was like a mass spell, and the real people behind this weren't cultists of Cord. They were cultists of some kind of demon lord, I forget his name, and they tricked all these Cord followers into following them. So now they're going to harbor the return of their god by all these new fresh sacrifices. And our party is having none of this. So we all jump up on this and we attack. And Luna is down after she beats down the first guy. There's like 2 guys and the main boss. She beats down the first guy. She's engaged with the other guy, but she hears the spell the main guy's casting. So she tries to use her acrobatics to like flip out of the guy's threat range, because we knew about disengaging damage, but we didn't know about attacks of opportunity. I don't know. We only played with like half the rules in this campaign because we were still new at D&D. So I flip around, but before I can, I'm hit again, and I'm hit and I'm knocked out. And I'm on the ground, and I'm still thinking, okay, dice fall where they may, I'm out of this battle. It was really early in the battle, so there wasn't much more for me to do. So I think I just like cracked a can of like Dr. Pepper or something and just start sipping on it and watching the battle. And the battle won again by, you guessed it, the deck of many things. and that won the battle. And the campaign was over. Zal became like some kind of like, not really king, but a lord of the land. He went back to his castle and his jewels. Arsonist went home with his new friend Dave. Funny enough, Luna saw an image of Artemis and Cord, and Luna was granted the ability to take levels in Paladin after this, but we never really came back to this campaign, so, you know, it really doesn't mean anything in the long term, but Luna was happy because she was, like, literally, after Frank died, she would, like, cry every night, screaming to a god that she felt, or goddess she felt like didn't care. So, you know, she felt good about it, and I learned later that the DM, I asked him about it, like, about that campaign. I was like, yeah, it was like a couple months later. I was like, yeah, I really didn't enjoy the ending of that. He was like, yeah, I know. The Deck of Many Things really broke the game. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, every time you guys would draw from the Deck of Many Things, I would buff the final boss a little bit. Just because, you know, you could have drawn any number of things that could have helped you. And I kind of stared at him and gave him the stink eye for a second. And he kind of looked at me, and he knew exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking the only person that drew all the cards was Zal, and like once or twice Arsonist. And they never died. Or they never died, they never struggled. And he admitted that, like, that wasn't exactly his best run campaign now that he looks back on it, and he probably should have just let Zal die, and he probably should have, like, toned down the final boss so everyone kind of felt useful, because I died early in the fight, so I felt, like, useless at the end of that. But, you know, all things said, it was a bad experience for me as a player. But the guy did get better at DMing, and we all got better as players and as people after that one. And that's basically where Luna's story ends. There's no really part 2. There's no really resurrection of Frank. Nothing too like that. So I'm gonna start signing off now. So if you like this part, if you like this story, like, comment, tell me what you liked. If you didn't like this part, leave a dislike, a comment, and tell me what you didn't like. If you want to see more content just like this, slap that like button, or slap the subscribe button. Slap them both. I don't care. I don't discriminate against that. And finally, if you think this video is good enough to share, don't forget to share it on Twitter, Tumblr, whatever you would share it on. And until next time, I'm Mom Big Mump, signing off.